One summer night, I met this guy named Matt while I was out with friends at a bar. We clicked pretty quickly, mostly just vibing over the Cubs game playing on TV. My group drifted away while we talked, so it wasn't like he ever really interacted with any of my friends. By the end of the night, we exchanged Instagrams. He had a decent following, and his page made him look like a normal 20-something guy. Traveling, partying, staying active, nothing out of the ordinary. Honestly, I didn't think much of it. Usually, when you meet someone at a bar and swap info, that's where it ends. You always say you'll hit each other up, but by the next day, sober, you don't even bother. Except the very next day, which was Saturday, I went out again for my friend Tyler's birthday. This time it was an outdoor bar by the water, packed with people. I posted a quick video on my Instagram story while everyone sang to him, not realizing that post was about to draw Matt right back into my night. After about an hour, when dinner was over and we were just hanging around the outdoor section of the bar, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there was Matt. He grinned, dabbed me up, and said this was his favorite Saturday night spot. I introduced him properly to my friends, half joking, "You guys remember Matt?" Even if they hadn't really talked to him, they had at least seen him the night before. The night carried on, drinks kept flowing, and Matt blended into the group like he belonged. It didn't seem weird then. Everyone was drunk, everyone was laughing, and no one questioned it. The next time I saw Matt was a week later, when he hit me up out of the blue asking if I wanted to go golfing. I'm terrible at golf, but I've always wanted to get better, so when he suggested we meet early Sunday morning, I said yes. None of my friends wanted to come, too hungover, too early, so it ended up just the two of us. We played 9 holes in the blazing sun, joking around for 2 hours, and then grabbed food before I headed home. At the time, it all felt normal, even fun. But looking back, that's when the pattern started. Matt always finding ways to get me alone. I saw Matt one more time after that before he invited me on a hiking trip to Arizona. The Grand Canyon had always been on my bucket list, so when I checked with work and saw the dates lined up, I said yes right away. I tried to get Tyler and a few other friends to come too, but they all gave the usual excuses. No time off, no money, not worth the hassle. When I asked if any of Matt's friends were going, he just laughed and said, "Nah, it would be just us." I didn't think too hard about it then, even though I realized I'd never actually met any of his friends in person. His Instagram made him look like a social butterfly, so I brushed it off. We flew out on August 15th, planning to return on the 18th. Our flight landed late and Matt rented a car for the weekend. On the way to the Airbnb, we stopped for food and alcohol, joking like it was just another adventure. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I started to wonder why this popular guy only ever seemed to want me alone. By the time we got to the Airbnb, it was late. We cracked open a couple of beers, and I could tell Matt wanted to stay up and hang out, but I was wiped and ready for bed. That's when I noticed there was only one bed in the whole place. I hadn't even thought to ask, just assumed. When I mentioned it, he casually pointed at the couch I was sitting on and said, "It's a pullout, you'll be fine. And hey, I'm not even charging you for the Airbnb, so relax." At first, I brushed it off. A free stay in Arizona didn't seem like something worth complaining about. I pulled out the sofa bed, set up the sheets, and surprisingly, it was comfortable. But around 3 a.m., I woke up. Not from a nightmare, but from the creak of footsteps in the living room. Matt was moving through the dark toward the kitchen, saying nothing, not even grabbing a glass of water right away. I'm a light sleeper, so even that tiny sound made my heart race. For a moment, I just lay there in the dark, wide awake, wondering why it felt like he was waiting for me to fall back asleep. The next morning, Matt woke me up early. The sun was blazing, and we headed straight for the Grand Canyon. I had seen pictures before, but standing there in person made me feel tiny, like the world could just swallow me whole. We hiked the Bright Angel Trail, and within minutes, I realized just how out of shape I was. Matt, on the other hand, was full of energy, cracking jokes, moving fast, and constantly looking back at me with this grin that made me feel both embarrassed and uneasy. We stopped for breaks, snapping pictures, the kind you'd expect tourists to take. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake this weird feeling, like he was studying me more than the view. After 2 or 3 exhausting hours, we made it back to the car. I was starving, so we grabbed food at a deli before the long drive to Phoenix. Once back, we crashed for a nap, then later wandered the city, hitting bar after bar. By then, I'd noticed Matt could drink like crazy, without ever really looking drunk, while I was practically falling over. At first, it just felt like a typical summer night out, but something about how sober his eyes stayed while mine blurred started to gnaw at me, like I was the only one losing control. It was late, time slipping away faster than I realized. The last thing I remember clearly was Matt blasting music through the Airbnb speakers and me fumbling to plug my phone in next to the couch before crashing. At some point in the night, I woke up, dry-mouthed, stomach heavy with booze and bladder screaming. The place was dark and dead quiet, but as I got up, I swore I heard a faint crack in the floorboards, like someone shifting their weight in the room. My eyes darted around the shadows, but nothing moved. I brushed it off and stumbled to the bathroom. Midstream, I froze. The sound of a door latch clicking shut echoed through the silence. It had to be Matt's bedroom door. After finishing, I knocked lightly, whispering his name, but no response came. The door was locked. Uneasy, I shook it off and crawled back to the couch, falling asleep fast. But the real shock came the next morning. My head was pounding, and when I reached for my phone, I froze. I had left it charging on the floor by my bed, but now it was neatly placed on the table, unplugged. My stomach turned. Had I moved it in a drunken haze, or had someone else been standing over me while I slept?
That day, there was no way I could have handled hiking. I would have puked my guts out. Instead, we just Ubered back to the car and spent the afternoon cruising around, checking out neighborhoods, some scenic spots, and even the botanical gardens. It was nice, calm, almost like a reset. I didn't even want to drink that day, but of course, Matt convinced me. And just like the night before, we ended up hammered again. Our flight wasn't until early afternoon, so at least waking up early wasn't hanging over our heads. By the time we got back to the Airbnb, it was between 1 and 2 a.m. This time, Matt insisted I take the bed, saying it was only fair. I didn't argue. I grabbed my bag, went into his room, and shut the door behind me. I didn't lock it, though it wouldn't have mattered. The locks were the kind you could pop open with a butter knife anyway. I wish I could say that's where the trip ended and we went home safely. But that night, something happened that still makes me shake when I think about it. I woke up suddenly, not even sure why. You know that feeling when a sound pulls you out of sleep, but your brain doesn't quite register it? My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I reached for my phone. It wasn't there. I had plugged it in right beside the bed, left it on the mattress next to me, but now the cord was dangling empty onto the floor. Confused, I leaned over to look for it, first on one side of the bed, then the other. That's when my heart nearly exploded out of my chest, because sprawled face down on the floor, inches from where I was sleeping, was Matt, completely silent, completely still.
He looked up like he had just woken from a deep sleep, but something about his eyes felt off, almost too blank. I shouted, "What are you doing?" My voice cracked from both anger and fear. He rubbed his face, acting confused, mumbling that he must have been so blacked out he walked in here thinking it was his bed, then crashed on the floor when he realized I was already in it. But it didn't add up. He was lying on the far side of the bed, the side away from the door. That meant he had walked all the way around me to get there. My chest tightened as I accused him of taking my phone. He immediately played dumb, suggesting maybe it fell under the bed. Then, without hesitation, he dropped to his knees, looked under, and pulled it out almost instantly. "Bro, here it is," he said casually, like nothing was wrong. My blood ran cold. He found it way too fast. I stared at him, and in that moment, he didn't feel like the same guy I had been hanging out with the past few weeks. Something darker was behind his smile. I told him I'd just sleep on the couch instead, but he insisted he would leave the room. He walked out, and I locked the door as fast as I could. My mind was spinning. If it weren't for the phone, maybe I could chalk it up to him being wasted. But no, I knew he had been trying to get into it, maybe to read my messages, maybe worse. Still drunk, I eventually drifted back to sleep, but the night wasn't over. Sometime later, I woke up again, this time instantly knowing why. At the foot of the bed, in the faint glow from the blinds, I saw Matt's silhouette. He was standing there, perfectly still, watching me. Before I could react, he sat down on the bed and slowly started rubbing my foot. That was it. I screamed, jumped up, and shoved him off with everything I had, forcing him out the door. My hands were shaking as I stuffed clothes and toiletries back into my bag. He didn't say a word. He just sat there on the couch, upright and blank, staring at me like some creepy NPC frozen in place. And that silent stare was worse than anything he could have said. I called an Uber straight to the airport. I wasn't staying there another minute. Matt didn't even try to stop me, which somehow made it worse. I got to the airport just as the sun started to rise, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, replaying every second of the trip. I waited there for hours until my flight, paid extra just so I wouldn't have to sit near him, and kept my eyes glued to the window while people boarded so I wouldn't risk making eye contact. I didn't even tell my friends right away. I needed time to process. When I finally did, a couple of them said, "See, we told you he was weird," pointing out how he was always alone when he ran into me. That's when it hit me. He had probably only shown up at that outdoor bar because he saw my Instagram story. Actual stalker behavior. I blocked his number and his Instagram, but before I did, I went back through his posts. I found one where he was with a group of guys, but no one was tagged. I dug through the comments and found one guy who looked like he was in the picture. When I messaged him, he replied in less than 10 minutes. His exact words were, "Nah, guy's a freak, run away." Then he told me his own story and said a bunch of other guys had to cut Matt off too. He even untagged himself from that photo. He wasn't surprised at all when I explained what happened in Arizona. His response? Guy should be in jail. That's when it really sunk in. I thought Matt was just another dude who wanted to hang out, someone I'd drink with and maybe even call a friend. But in reality, he was a predator, someone who could have done God knows what if I hadn't trusted my gut. And even now, the one thing that still keeps me up at night is wondering, what exactly was he trying to get into on my phone? This all went down last summer, right in the middle of July heat. I was home from college, just trying to enjoy a break before classes started up again. My name's Kyle. I live in Maryland, and back then all I wanted was some time to chill with my two closest friends, Jason and Marcus. We've been tight since high school, but now that we all go to different colleges, hanging out like the old days was rare. So we came up with the perfect plan, a weekend trip to Ocean City. Jason's family owned this small beach house a couple blocks from the sand. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom spot. But for us, it was paradise. Sun, drinks, late nights, and a chance to catch up. We hit the road on Friday afternoon, and the second we pulled into town, the air was thick with salt, sunscreen, and that heavy July humidity that clings to your skin. The boardwalk was packed with tourists, kids running around with beach balls, lifeguards shouting at swimmers, and families setting up umbrellas like it was a competition. Everything felt normal. Just another fun summer weekend with my best friends. At least, that's what I thought. Later that night, we headed back to the house, grilled up some burgers, cracked open more drinks, and by midnight, we were drunk and restless. That's when Marcus tossed out the idea of going back to the beach, and honestly, it sounded perfect. There's something about the ocean at night that pulls you in. The boardwalk noise dies down, the sand cools under your feet, and the waves sound louder, almost alive. The beach was empty, just shadows and the tide rolling in. We didn't bring much, just hoodies, our phones, and a beat-up flashlight Jason found in a drawer. None of us planned to swim. We just wanted to walk, maybe laugh, and let the ocean carry the silence. But the silence that night felt different. We cut down a side street to the boardwalk, then took the steps onto the sand. The place was almost ghostly. No people, just the steady crash of waves and a faint glow from the lamps above. The moon slipped in and out of clouds, barely enough light to see where the surf touched the shore. We walked along the edge, letting the icy water splash our ankles, laughing and talking like old times. After a while, we stopped by an empty lifeguard tower, tossed ourselves down in the sand and stared at the sky. For a moment, it felt calm, but the silence started to feel too heavy, like the beach itself was holding its breath. That's when Jason suddenly sat up, his voice sharp as he said, "Is that someone walking over there?" We all followed his gaze, squinting toward the shoreline. At first, it was nothing but shadows blending with the waves. But then I saw it too, a figure, just a dark silhouette, maybe 50 yards away, pacing right at the edge where the water kissed the sand. At first, we brushed it off, assuming it was another night owl like us. But the longer we watched, the stranger it felt. The figure's walk wasn't casual. It was stiff, almost robotic, with arms that barely moved and a posture that seemed twisted. The head stayed slightly tilted, like it was searching the ground, scanning for something only it could see. A chill ran through me, and suddenly the quiet night didn't feel so peaceful anymore. We all went quiet, our laughter fading as we kept watching that figure. Something about them made my stomach twist, and I whispered, "What the hell are they doing?" Marcus muttered maybe they were just searching for something, while Jason tried to joke it off, saying it was probably a drunk tourist hunting for lost keys. We laughed nervously and went back to talking, but I couldn't stop glancing their way. A few minutes later, my chest tightened. The figure had stopped moving. They were completely still now, just standing there, and they were closer. Way closer, maybe 30 yards away. The air felt heavier, and suddenly it wasn't so easy to ignore them anymore.
Marcus finally broke the silence, whispering, "They've been standing there for like 5 minutes. Who does that?" Before I could answer, Jason said something that made my stomach sink. "He's not just standing, he's looking at you, Kyle." My throat went dry. I forced a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off, but Jason shook his head. "No, look closer. His head's tilted at you." And before I could stop him, Jason lifted the flashlight. I hissed at him not to, but he clicked it on anyway. The beam caught the figure for just a second before the light flickered and died. But that second was enough. His skin was this sick gray white, chest bare, dripping wet jeans clinging to his legs. His arms dangled lifeless at his sides, head tilted at a wrong, unnatural angle. And his eyes, wide, bulging, staring straight through me. The second the light touched him, everything exploded. One moment he was frozen in the surf, the next he launched forward in a full sprint straight at us. No build-up, no stumble, just this horrifying, inhuman burst of speed like something out of a nightmare. All three of us screamed at the top of our lungs and tore across the sand. I could hear Marcus shouting, "Go, go, go!" as our feet pounded into the beach, lungs burning, hearts ready to burst. We didn't dare look back, too afraid of what we'd see gaining on us. By the time we hit the boardwalk steps, my legs were shaking, but adrenaline pushed me up and onto the street. When we finally turned around, the beach was empty. Nothing. No figure, no footprints, just the crash of waves and the wind cutting through the silence. We stood there frozen, drenched in sweat, waiting for him to appear again. He didn't. Back at the house, we locked every door and window, shut the blinds tight, and sat in the dark until sunrise. None of us slept. We couldn't shake the feeling he was still out there, watching. The next morning, we tried to brush it off, laughing nervously and saying maybe it was just some cracked-out homeless guy messing with people. But none of us really believed that. The way he moved, the way he vanished without leaving a single footprint, it didn't add up. We stayed one more night in that house, but we didn't step outside. The second the sun came up, we packed and left. Weeks later, I thought it was finally behind us, until Jason texted me. He said he kept having the same dream, waking up in his room to see the figure standing there, dripping wet, head tilted, just staring. No words, no movement, just watching. I told him that was creepy as hell, but I didn't admit the truth. I'd been having the same dream too. Every detail matched. And sometimes, even when I'm awake, I swear I hear wet footsteps in my hallway. But when I check, there's nothing. No one. Then, last week, almost a full year later, I was scrolling through a local Ocean City Facebook group when a post stopped me cold. Someone uploaded a photo they'd taken the night before on the beach. The picture was grainy and dark, but the caption said, "Does anyone know who this creepy guy is? Saw him standing by the water around 1 a.m. My heart dropped as I clicked it. The image was blurry, but I knew him instantly. Same posture, same pale skin, head tilted down at the water. The comments only made it worse. Dozens of people said they'd seen him too. Some swore he stood there for hours. One person claimed they watched him walk straight into the ocean and never come back. Another said they found wet footprints on their back porch. No trail leading to them, no trail leaving. Just there. I don't know what we really saw that night, but I know this. I'll never set foot on that beach after dark again. I grew up in Massachusetts, and every summer of my life was spent in this small, picture-perfect coastal town in New England. You know the type. Quaint shops, old wooden docks, and that salty ocean air that never really leaves your clothes. For us, summer wasn't about tourists or fancy vacations. It was about freedom. Long nights, dumb adventures, and just being with the same group of friends who all came back every year. We thought nothing could touch us. I was 19 when this happened.
fresh off another long day working as a dock boy. Like any other night, I shot out a text asking what the plan was, then swung by to pick up my buddy, let's call him Emerson, since he was the one with the fake ID. He grabbed us some alcohol, and instead of waiting around in town, we figured why not take my family's boat out for a little while. Just a chill night on the water with some beers, nothing crazy. At least, that's what we thought when we pushed off from the dock.
But they didn't. The boat stayed completely dark. No music, no lights, nothing. Just sitting there in silence. At first we brushed it off, but the longer it sat, the stranger it felt. Emerson kept glancing over, whispering that he swore he saw movement. I told him to relax, but truthfully, I felt it too. This uneasy weight in the air, like we weren't alone. That empty boat felt less like neighbors on the water and more like something watching us from the shadows. At first, I brushed it off, but the longer than stood there, the stranger it felt. They didn't wave, didn't shout, didn't even move, just stared. Their silhouettes frozen against the fading light. Emerson whispered that something was wrong, and I could see the unease in his face, but I tried to laugh it off again. Then, as the minutes dragged on, I realized he was right. The air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself it was harmless, deep down I knew we weren't just being watched. We were being studied. The second my voice echoed over the water, the figures didn't flinch. They didn't laugh, didn't move, just kept staring like shadows carved into the night. Emerson grabbed my arm and whispered harshly, "Shut up, man. This isn't funny." His tone finally made my stomach twist. The silence from their boat was too heavy, too deliberate. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't some harmless prank. Something about them was deeply, terrifyingly wrong. The laugh still echoed in my head when those splashes broke the silence, and suddenly the water didn't feel calm anymore. It felt alive, like something was moving toward us. Emerson's panic was real, his hands fumbling with the rope as he yanked the anchor up, while I sat there, half drunk and trying to convince myself it was some dumb prank. But that last figure never moved, never shifted, just kept staring at us from the boat, and the sight of him standing there frozen burned into my chest like a warning we should have taken seriously. The second I heard that splash and saw a pale hand clamp onto the railing, every trace of laughter vanished. Emerson's face was pale, his arms shaking as he gripped the anchor like it was the only thing keeping us alive. My chest tightened, heart slamming so hard it hurt while I fumbled with the keys, finally twisting them until the engine roared. The boat rocked violently as another set of wet hands slapped against the side, that awful sound echoing in the dark. For a split second, it felt like the water itself was reaching for us, and I realized this wasn't a prank, this was a nightmare. I slammed the engine to life and floored it, smashing straight into a sandbar before jerking into reverse and tearing back into open water. My heart was pounding. Emerson was cursing me out, and I knew he was right. We should have gone straight home. But instead, we started picking up the stuff scattered during our escape, like idiots pretending things were normal. That's when I froze. In the distance, right where we'd just come from, I saw the glow of another boat. Its lights cut through the dark, and it wasn't drifting. It was speeding right at us. I shouted, "No way," grabbed the wheel, and slammed the throttle. The boat wasn't fast. It rattled and groaned with every push, but I kept it wide open. Behind us, their boat was closing in, its bow bouncing hard over the waves. Emerson was freaking out, yelling, "Who are these guys? What do they want?" His voice cracked with panic, but I stayed locked on the docks ahead, praying we'd make it. 5 minutes felt like an eternity, and by then, they were so close I could hear the engine roar. My gut told me we were done, so I yanked the wheel hard left, skimming dangerously near the shoreline. For some reason, maybe luck, or maybe something darker, their boat veered off. Emerson and I sat frozen, breaths ragged, as I sped back to the docks without looking back. After docking, I was grateful the boat hadn't taken any damage, but the real relief was just being back on solid ground. We found our friends and told them everything, and of course the theories started flying. Maybe those guys wanted to rob us, maybe they wanted the boat, or maybe it was something worse. The truth is, we didn't recognize the boat, and they definitely didn't seem like locals. And honestly, I don't like to imagine what would have happened if they had caught us. All I know is I'm thankful Emerson was there, because without his doubt pushing me to act, things could have ended very differently. Even now, I sometimes wonder if that boat ever really left, or if they're still out there, waiting.